Party leader in Parliament, Harun Idrisu, has condemned what he says is an unprofessional manner in which two suspected criminals were gunned down by police at Asawase, the Ashanti regional capital, early this month. Audu Osman and Lukman Mohammed, who had been arrested by the police, were said to have been shot when they attempted to flee, whilst leading investigators to a criminal hideout at Abuabo. MP for Asawase, Muntaka Mubarak, raised the issue on the floor 2 weeks ago, prompting the summoning of the Interior Minister Ambrose Derry, who told the House on Wednesday investigations are underway. But the minority leader is insisting the minister would have to admit the police acted unprofessionally and allow for an independent investigation into the case.
Mr. Speaker, like it or not, there are breaches to civil liberties and there are breaches to fundamental human rights. This is not a question. Minimum force, you cannot describe 7 pellet bullets as minimum force. You cannot describe killing as minimum force. Not in this country called Ghana again. We should not. We should build a new culture. And that culture must be one which is courageous to say the police, the way you behave is unprofessional. Short and simple. Unprofessional, unacceptable. But when you say, I worry, and Minister, may I refer you to Article 19 of the Constitution. The first generation of human rights are civil liberties. Where is the life of Audu Osman? Where is the life? Lost. So there is no allegation of breach. A consummated breach. He's been denied the right to live unlawfully, without recourse to the laws of Ghana and without recourse to fundamental freedoms and human rights guaranteed him under this constitution. It could be any other person. So I worry when, Minister, you say, as if you are still doubting that there is a breach of right. The first right is the right to live. If you don't have life, you can't claim the other freedoms and liberties. You can't. They don't have their life again. And Mr. Speaker, I worry again when I hear justification of minimum force. Minimum force cannot be the use of a fatal weapon, and a weapon which unleashes as many as 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pellets. Cannot be minimum force, whether defined or undefined. No, Mr. Speaker, I say I worry. Mr. Speaker, finally, the minister says investigation is ongoing. I hope that he would want, probably, the police themselves, must they be investigating themselves? He should be looking at some independent group investigating this matter and all other matters, because they may also be attempting to conceal some of it, which may be embarrassing for them as to who has played what role.
The Interior Minister, however, says it is too early to draw conclusions on what exactly happened, assuring investigations will be completed soon.
It's too early to talk about 7 pellets. There's no autopsy report. 7 pellets. There's no autopsy report. So let us be balanced. I am very worried concerned about the death, and I appreciate the lamentations of the MP. However, if we want to view this one, it should be balanced. That was there any attempt to escape from lawful custody? All these things need to be put into consideration. What I would say is that whatever complaints you have, bring them, we shall investigate them, and we shall make sure that where there are breaches, there will be redress. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. And to say that we should be balanced, we are the same people who accuse the police if the criminals escape, suspects escape. We expect them to bring law and order. So when it comes to this, let's be balanced and let the law take its course, but let's respect the rights of all people involved.
Now, petitioners seeking the creation of a new region out of the Volta region say the move is particularly crucial for the development of the area, which has been sidelined for far too long. To ensure their petition is successful, some chiefs and residents from the northern part of the region have formed a joint consultative committee to present arguments to the 9-member commission set up by government. Its secretary, Kweku Adia, says they can no longer tolerate the neglect suffered for years. There is more in the following report.
The northern part of Volta region, now seeking to be a region on its own, used to be part of the northern region before Ghana became independent in 1957. It was during the carving out of the Upper West and Upper East regions that it was added to the Volta region. The chiefs, supported by some of the prominent residents of towns in that part of the region, namely Kwasa, Kajebi, Buem, Kratin Chomro, Jasekine, are the ones pushing for the creation of the new region. Their main argument, according to Secretary of the Joint Consultative Committee on the proposed OT region, Kweku Adia, is that development has eluded them for far too long.
Of cocoa production in the area from colonial times to date, and you go to see that there is nothing there, you weep from our people. You weep. You weep. So basically, when we say we want development, we want jobs, we want our people also to be placed in good positions. When you hold good positions, top positions, you have influence, and you can help the young ones, the youth. If you don't have people from there, how do you do it? We are not dealing in hypotheses. We are dealing with facts. What all that we are saying is speculation. What is the evidence? It is only for one reason. The place has been left undeveloped. It contains population of over 700,000, substantial number, and they are not developed. They are not getting, like the examples I've mentioned. So many examples, you see. And normally, it comes to a time you can say we will not bear it again. You see, we are not a violent type. That is why we want to go the constitutional and legal means. You see.
Chairman of the commission, Justice Stephen Alan Brobe, urged all petitioners to let the supreme interest of Ghana inform their pursuit.
This is the first time that the provisions of Article 5 of the 1992 Constitution on the creation or alteration of a region have been invoked. There is therefore a duty on all of us to ensure that we chart a course that is ultimately in the best interest of our people.
Petitioners from the Bunahafo region are expected to appear before the commission on Thursday.
Civil society groups in Ghana is questioning the sustainability of some key government programs and policies outlined in the 2018 budget presented to Parliament last week. The Juma budget, as described by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, is expected to create thousands of jobs, but Ghana doubts government's commitment to the cause, especially when allocation to goods and services in the agriculture sector was significantly reduced in the 2018 budget. There's more in the following report.
The civil society group gave its assessment on the various sectors, namely education, health, agriculture, water and sanitation, and children protection, pointing out in each case what it believes are concerns that needed urgent attention. For the education sector and the introduction of the Voluntary Education Fund to support government's flagship free SHS program, Send Ghana says the initiative is lacking clarity and direction.
There is lack of clarity in terms of how much is expected for, from the fund. I mean, how much the fund is expected to raise, what will be the modalities, for how long would that fund be in existence in order to address the financial sustainability of the SHS. Who are we targeting? Is it the donor community? Are we talking about the company, the corporate world, or who are we targeting, and how much are we targeting? How much do we expect to even raise? Vis-a-vis what is the cost of the infrastructure deficit that exists as having been created by the introduction of the free SHS program?
It describes the state of the health sector as worrying, given the fact that government has admitted funding challenges, which has affected the purchase of vaccines for immunization in 2017 and the NHIS program. Budget allocation to agencies under the Office of the President was also an issue of concern. Country Director of Send Ghana describes the huge sums of money allocated to the Senior Minister's Office and the Zongo Development Ministry as needless.
The Office of the Senior Minister being allocated a little over 6 million. We see business development taking about 52 million. We see Zongo and the inner city taking about 101. We see planning taking 3 million. We see all of these allocations. Question is that couldn't we have achieved the purpose for which they were established if they were still aligned with the existing ministries and free those resources to provide services, to provide goods and services? That's the question that we need to interrogate, and I think that we have created too much bureaucracy.
But one Bongo and inner city, for instance, falls under.
Inner city may have been promised, but is it prudent? Is it what value is it adding in terms of saving public resources and channeling them to productive sectors?
Send Ghana also critiques the job creation agenda.
The Juma will come, as my colleague said, from example from the agricultural sector. That has a huge potential, especially the President's flagship program of planting for food and job creation. If last year we succeeded in only meeting half of the target set in terms of provision of seeds, improved seeds, and subsidized fertilizer, then it gives us cause to worry.
Send Ghana, however, describes as laudable the good macroeconomic performance, clear commitment to implement the SDGs, and decrease donor dependency in almost all sectors in the budget.
We're taking a break here on Joy News Prime, but still ahead, retail giant Malcolm calls for the prosecution of the owner of the previous building housing its Achimota branch, which collapsed 5 years ago, claiming 14 lives.
It is very disappointing that in the face of these obvious failures, the owner of the structure that collapsed, causing death, injury, and loss of business, has not been brought to book under the laws of Ghana.
And former President John Mahama says the shocking demise of a Senpai FM show host, Kaba, requires that the country pays a lot more attention to healthcare to avoid needless deaths.
I said that maybe we must use his death to look at other issues other than just politics, like healthcare. How can we improve healthcare so that young people like this are not struck down? I mean,
retail giant Malcolm is calling for the prosecution of the owner of the building housing its Achimota branch, which collapsed 5 years ago. The tragedy on November 7, 2012, blamed on defects in the structure, claimed the lives of 14 people, mainly staff of the retailer. Malcolm, which suffered considerable brand damage as a result of the collapse, believes the owner of the building, Nana Kwesi Buedi, should be investigated and prosecuted as a deterrent to others who put up such structures. The company is also demanding the release of the final report on the investigation commissioned in 2012. Emmanuel Ante has more.
Years ago, this was where a 6-story building was sited. It housed the Malcolm shopping mall, the Achimota branch. But the building collapsed, killing many and injuring dozens. Now, the government commissioned a committee to go into what caused the accident. But as we speak, 5 years on, the report is yet to be released. And this, the management of Malcolm are unhappy about and are demanding immediate release of the report.
Malcolm, as an investor creating jobs in Ghana, is concerned that not a single investigatory report on the collapse of that property owned by Nana Kwesi Buedi, director of Kinsaido's company, has been released. We call upon all agencies who conducted investigations to release such reports that hopefully will address the following concerns. 1. Was the construction covered by a building permit by the relevant state agency? Number 2, was soil test conducted before such a huge 6-story building was put up? Question number 3, was a qualified structural engineer contracted for the project? And number 4, were the building materials used of the right specification and mix? If the investigative reports answer no to any or all of those questions, then the obvious cause of the sudden collapse of the building was improper, shoddy, and haphazard construction without permit, supervision, and technical expertise. We call on all state agencies that have something to do in the matter of the collapse of the building that housed the old Malcolm shop in Achimota, owned by Nana Kwesi Gwedu, director of Insiders Company Limited, Accra, to dust their files, fast-track their processes and procedures to bring justice to bear and finality to the case. If the regulatory arm do not take such matters seriously, then we should not be surprised if such huge levels of negligence cause further avoidable loss of life and property in Ghana. Malcolm demands action. 5 years of waiting is more than enough.
They are also demanding that the owner of the building should be brought to book immediately.
It is very disappointing that in the face of these obvious failures, the owner of the structure that collapsed, causing death, injury, and loss of business has not been brought to book under the laws of Ghana. Malcolm, as an investor, operates within the laws of this country, and we expect that the same law should protect our investment as security and incentive for growing our business for the larger benefit of the economy of Ghana. 5 years is obviously too long for any business house or entity which suffers such huge losses in human and material resources to look on helplessly while the inaction of state agencies allows the culprit freedom without any penalty to serve as a deterrent.
Just a few meters from this site, Malcolm has built a structure with a view of demonstrating a commitment to adhering to best practices and safety standards in doing business with the customer in mind. They believe this structure's integrity is much better than what they occupied in 2012. Emmanuel Ante, Joy News, Accra.
Elsewhere, Winneba High Court has ordered the University Teachers Association of Ghana at the University of Education, Winneba, to conduct fresh elections within 21 days to elect new executives. This follows the quashing of the process that saw the election of the current UTAC executives at the university. The court, presided over by His Lordship Justice Kwamina Ato Mills-Graves, also ordered the UEW UTAC executives not to continue holding themselves out as UTAC executives. Correspondent Richard Kojunyakun has more in the following report.
On the 15th of September 2017, the University Teachers Association of Ghana, the University of Education, Winneba, held elections to elect its executives to represent the association. The said election was conducted excluding lecturers from the Kumasi campus and the Mampo campuses of the same university. The exclusion of the 122 UTAC members from the Kumasi and Mampo campuses in the said elections triggered an action at the Winneba High Court. The plaintiffs prayed the court, among other reliefs, to quash the elections and to restrain the UTAC executives from holding themselves as executives. Today, the Winneba High Court granted their wish and annulled the said elections. The court further ordered an election that includes all campuses of the university to be run within 21 days. Alex Afenyo-Markin is the counsel for the plaintiffs.
We came to court optimistic of justice. And once justice has been given, we are forever grateful. Like we indicated, the UEW has 4 campuses, and it cannot be that only 2 campuses will be allowed to elect officers that represent the university. So the fact that the court has eventually agreed with this position tells you that we came to court well fortified under the law, and we didn't just come vexatiously or just to waste the time of the court. So for the court declared as null and void the elections that were held on the Ijumako and Winneba campuses. and the said election that elected the current executives. That election has been declared as null and void. To all those who were elected, who were supposedly elected, have been restrained forthwith. Forthwith means immediately, that they cannot hold themselves as executives because that election has been declared null and void. Thirdly, UEW, which was also the respondent in the matter, has been restrained from ever recognizing these individuals as lawful executives of UEW chapter of Utah.
The plaintiffs couldn't hide their excitement after the judgment of the court.
Exactly what we sought, the relief that we sought has been granted by the court. Everything we sought, that Kumasi and Mampong has been disenfranchised, right, and that the court should order that they take part in the election because it is their constitutional right.
The University of Education Winneba has 4 campuses. The main campus at the University of Education Winneba, the Ejumako campus, the Mampong campus, and the Kumasi campus. And each campus is expected to have a polling station during the day of the elections for all duly qualified members of the association to vote to elect the executives. Richard Kwejonyako, Joy News, Winneba.
Now, coming up next on Joy News Prime, in business, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta confirms ADB and IDB are likely to be merged into a new National Development Bank. But also in the bulletin, doctors at Nkwanta in the Volta region are fighting hypertension, the silent killer, with the help of hairdressers and barbers who are winning customers whilst at it. And the First Lady, who is currently visiting China, has been speaking about her next project after the Konfanochi mother and baby unit.
Hello, good evening to you. Time now for business. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has indicated government is working to merge ADB and NIB in the creation of a new National Development Bank. The Finance Minister in the 2018 budget disclosed government is looking at using the new bank to be formed to finance its industrialization and agric agenda. Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta tells Joy Business they have come very far with the plan.
I mean, those are banks that we could capitalize towards that goal, or banks that could be put together towards that goal.
And we are far advanced with that one.
No, I think that the thinking process is clear, that we need a strong, vibrant and well-capitalized development bank to be able to support the agriculture industrialization drive.
You talked about some 1 billion cedis. Was it the real cost of the exemptions that you are giving to us that was announced in this way? Because last year I thought there was that.
No, we're talking about 2017.
What about this year?
The new
this year as well?
Taxes that we had eliminated, that was 1 billion cedis. This year we've not eliminated too many taxes.
It's quite marginal, of course.
Yeah, so we are okay.
So when you're saying that going forward, are you optimistic that some of these policies that you've outlined in the budget
Very much so, because I think you are seeing a response of interest in terms of entrepreneurs getting involved in industry and agriculture. And so that's the type of supply response. If we are able to provide appropriate credit price correctly, we will see the type of productivity that will come for the non-oil sector growth.
PwC was saying that let's take a second look at the whole VAT regime, because some of them are quite disincentive in realizing the revenue you're looking forward to in their presentation.
I did mention that there will be extensive conversations next year, and that will be on taxes, that will be on revenue, etc. So all of those will be looked at and examined.
You hinted about hero bond issue next year. How far have you come in the budget?
No, that's in there, and we certainly will be doing some sovereign bond. And it could be a combination of a euro bond, a samurai bond, a panda bond, or a green financing bond.
Accounting and tax advisory firm PricewaterhouseCoopers has been identifying some taxes that government may struggle to realize its projected revenue by the end of next year. According to the firm, the VAT flat rate scheme and the withholding VAT may face some collection challenges. Kweku Gansa is a tax expert with PricewaterhouseCoopers.
One was on the flat VAT rate system. The whole idea from the MPP manifesto was that they were going to target small and micro. And George, the best way to define small and micro is to look at a certain threshold, usually revenue or sales threshold. The moment you change that to something else, you may depart from your initial manifesto. Now, the manifesto said small and micro. By the time the law came out, it was talking about retailers and wholesalers. So the question that comes up is that who is a wholesaler, who is a retailer? And that has caused confusion up until now. That was why during the presentation, I did indicate clearly that things may look silent now. People are not talking about the VAT flat rate scheme because everybody has just gone quiet, doing whatever they want. About 2 months ago, I went to a restaurant to eat, George, and it would interest you to know that the restaurant was charging me 3%, whilst others are charging 17.5%. So the difficulties that we're going to see with this scheme would happen 2 years, 3 years down the line when the revenue starts their audit. So it is quite good. It is quite good that government says that they are open to relooking at our VAT design. So hopefully the 3% discussion would come up. The second thing which this budget said regarding VAT is called the withholding VAT. And just to explain, George, when you work for Joy FM and you are being paid, the amount that was stated on your contract is different from what gets into your bank account because Joy FM withholds tax. We're going to extend that principle to also VAT because if PwC provides services to say Joy FM and you are paying us, all that you can withhold is withholding tax, but you cannot withhold VAT. Are we clear? What the new budget is seeking to do is to expand the tax base, which is good, by also introducing the concept of withholding VAT.
And still on taxes, staff of the Ghana Revenue Authority in the Central Region on Wednesday took to the tax compliance awareness campaign to the streets of Cape Coast. Now, the GRA staff, some of who held placards with various inscriptions, urged the people to honor their tax obligations to support government's budget for development. According to the Assistant Commissioner of GRA in charge of the Central Region, George Amankwa-Boateng, many Ghanaians are not aware of their tax obligations under the new tax and the benefit they stand to get when they pay their taxes. Richard Kojonyako was there for Joy Business.
The Ghana Revenue Authority staff started the awareness campaign from the Cape Coast Technical University Junction through to the busiest business district in Cape Coast. The staff held various placards urging residents to honor their tax obligations. From one business area to the other, they educated the populace on why they need to pay their taxes. George Amankwa-Boateng is the Assistant Commissioner of the GRA in charge of the Central Region.
People do not seem to be aware that they have the responsibility or the obligation to pay taxes as enjoined by the Constitution. So people are supposed to pay taxes, and that is why we are in town drumming home the idea or the fact that they are supposed to pay taxes. Because as you know, the taxes are the lifeblood of development. Without taxes, there will be no development. Low revenue taxes stunts development. Hence the hashtag or the tagline, our taxes, our future. These taxes are what we use for development, as I said already. What it means is that if there is increased tax revenue, then there will be enhanced infrastructure development. We are talking about free SHS, we are talking about school buildings and supplies, we are talking about modern hospitals and supplies, we are talking about construction and expansion of water treatment projects, which can make for expansive potable water coverage. We are talking about railway development. All these things call for taxes and for money. Therefore, we are supposed to pay our taxes. Otherwise, we'll stifle development. These are early days yet. We will be able to tell the response when we come to the end of the month, when we are supposed to account for the taxes we collect in the month. So we'll see whether it will have a rippling effect. Whatever we have done will have a rippling effect on the revenues the revenue numbers we generate this very month. We are in for the long haul. Education is continuous. We cannot just educate one day and then stop. This one is going to be a long-time affair, but we would, at a point in time, evaluate the success, and then maybe we can change tack, or we can do whatever we are doing currently.
Amankwa-Boateng hints the GRA has chosen to go the electronic route. The deployment, with the help of government, according to him, is to guarantee the completeness and integrity of the staff revenue thus collected. Richard Kojonyako, Joy News, Cape Coast.
Now, Minister of Trade and Industry Alan Kwadwo has charged the Ghana Shippers Authority to formulate policies and programs that will make the maritime industry competitive in the West African sub-region. He said as African governments prepare to roll out the Continental Free Trade Area from next year, maritime trade will play a key role in making Ghana a business hub for the entire continent. He made a call in a keynote address to open the 8th African Shippers Day in Accra. Ebenezer Sabute has more in this report.
Ghana is currently well positioned as one of the best business destinations in Africa with respect to port operations. This is part of measures put in by the government to achieve trade facilitation goals under the World Trade Organization, that's WTO. Speaking at the 8th African Shippers Day in Accra, Minister of Trade and Industry Alan Kyerematen charged all shippers in the sub-region to ensure the realization of the full benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area earmarked to begin next year.
Please remember that you are a union of African Shippers Council. And I'm sure if you start interrogating the volume of work that is undertaken by your operators, you find that most of it is outside our continent. And that is why I want to use this occasion to draw your attention to what I believe is the most significant development that is coming up on the continent now, which is the establishment of the Continental Free Trade Area. I'm sure most of you may be aware that by the first quarter of next year, Africa is going to become a free trade area through the Continental Free Trade Area Initiative that is currently being negotiated.
In an interview, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority, Benonita Bismarck, called on government to support shippers by reducing the number of tax agencies operating at the ports.
An optional trade. They can decide that I'm going to clear through Cotonou, I'm going to clear through Togo, I'm going to clear through Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire has rail linking it to Burkina Faso. Why would they want to come here?
And that's all we have for you by way of business tonight. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji Riafi. For more business news, log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Have a great evening.
An incentive program being implemented by the United Nations World Food Programme has significantly contributed to the reduction of gender disparity, female dropouts, and early child marriage in the Nkwanta North and South District of the Volta region. The program, dubbed Removing Barriers to Gender Equality, has helped clear hurdles which hinder the education of female adolescents and ensured they complete their basic education. Joining us is Volta Regional Correspondent Fred Kwame Asare has more in the following report.
Due to the high poverty rate in the Nkwanta North and South districts of the Volta region, adolescent females are mostly denied education and in some cases given out for marriage at early age. This has contributed to the increase in gender disparity in schools in the two districts where males outnumber females. Beatrice Oduma lives in New Agu in the Nkwanta North district. She almost had education truncated after her father passed on. Her mother's small income from Gari processing business is not enough to keep two children in school. However, an incentive program removing barriers to gender equality, which is being implemented by the United Nations World Food Programme, has helped Beatrice to continue her education. The program, which previously saw the provision of food, had been revised to an e-voucher system to give flexibility to beneficiaries and their parents to choose items needed for the upkeep of their families. Vera Bohini is a senior communication associate at the United Nations World Food Programme.
What is happening in Nkwanta is that we are piloting cash, because in the other districts in the northern regions we are still doing e-vouchers and they are collecting food packages, but we are piloting cash here because there's food available. And so we contend that if there's food available and they have the cash, they go and buy the food from the market. And they can also buy other things that they need for education. And also, nutrition was a very important part of our consideration. Where we have the food baskets, yes, there is beans and there's oil and there's salt, but there are other nutritional aspects as well, like fruits and vegetables. They are important, so we are encouraging that kind of purchase as well. So the cash is more flexible. You can use it for so many other things than just being restricted. So we are piloting here to see how it works.
The program is being implemented in 42 junior high schools where there is 25% or less gender gap in enrollment in the Nkwanta North and South districts. Each beneficiary who records 80% attendance at school in a month is eligible to take home 51 Ghana cedis. Beatrice and 2,675 adolescent girls are benefiting from the program.
This program is very good for us, especially in this our community, because it's only my mom who always take care of us, me and then my younger brothers. Even uniform, we used to wear house dress to school, but now because of this program, we can see some challenge, different things in our life. We are able to learn with different exercise books and then sandals.
Officials of the Ghana Health Service are also engaged on the program to educate adolescent girls on good eating habits to ensure a healthy life. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News.
Gender Minister Utuku Afisa-Ajaba has justified a decision to set aside 30% of school feeding cooking contracts to her office for allocation on protocol basis. MPs are raising red flags over the allocation, which does not allow for competitive bidding for about 1/3 of the contracts. Responding to questions on the floor of Parliament, the minister said this is necessary to satisfy traditional leaders. Listen to the minister respond to questions from Bole Bamboy MP Sulemana Yusuf.
On that same guidelines, item 4 is stated that 30% of school feeding in districts should be reserved for protocol from the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection. I want to find out if the minister will want to tell us what she meant by protocol and who are qualified for the protocol.
Concerning the 30% protocol, it is something that was put in to ensure that traditional rulers and other persons in the communities will be factored into. Thank you very much.
The minister also announced a 30% increase in beneficiary schools under the program will take effect soon.
The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection has facilitated the payment so far of an amount of 210,803,509.92 Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, the ministry has also received from the Ministry of Finance 100,000, which will cover additional 44 days of the second term. This amount will be disbursed in due course. The ministry will embark on a 30% expansion of the program, which will increase the enrollment from 1,671,777,000 to 2,173,310. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the ministry is working on the development of an appropriate legal framework to establish an agency or authority to secure the gains, ensure reliable and consistent funds with a view to position the school feeding as a vehicle for reducing poverty and hunger and increasing national development.
The Municipal Chief Executive of the Lejokuku Municipal Assembly says the Assembly is working to expedite action on the completion of a 24-seater lavatory at the Nungwa Secondary School. She says the outfit would also, in the interim, provide 4 mobile toilets to ease the insanitary conditions at the school. The District Magistrate Court ruled that the school be closed on Friday, November 24, after the environmental situation there was brought to the attention of the court by some sanitation officers of the Assembly. Some of the school's washrooms are in a very bad state, as authorities there say they are working to fix the situation.
For now, the contractor, we are putting up 24-seater toilet, 12 for the boys and then 12 for the girls here for the school. So this morning I talked to the contractor to speed up the work, which he has promised. But it seems as if it's about finance, the financial aspect. So I even talked to the consultant too, which he has promised to allocate the school with 4 mobile toilets for now. And this sanitation issue of the toilets, I wasn't aware that they would be taken to court, because I was attending a 3-day workshop on the same sanitation issue at Abukubi. On Friday, I got to know that they have been served with summons to come to the court. And I saw it on the social media that the school has been closed down, but it hasn't been closed down.
The headmistress of the school, Cecilia Samwa-Boating, says she is written to the Ghana Education Service to intervene before the scheduled date for the closure ordered by the court.
I have been appointed here by my superiors, GES. So I have communicated to them in writing, explaining the situation, and I believe that they will act. But they can act even today. We are just in the morning. We haven't gotten to the afternoon. I believe my superiors will act.
Okay, so you're waiting for an intervention from the Ghana Education Service?
That is it.
Okay, on the ruling?
Whatever needs to be done to rectify the situation,
okay,
I believe they will act. My dear, as you have seen, the sanitary conditions have been pertaining before I came. We have remedied the situation in a way. And for that matter, this very bad one you saw was closed down because a contract has been awarded for the building of a well-banked toilet project.
Now, First Lady Rebecca Akufo-Addo says her next project after the completion of the mother and baby unit at the Komfanoche Teaching Hospital will be the Kolebu Teaching Hospital in Accra. Mrs. Akufo-Addo, who is currently in China to explore investment opportunities for Ghanaian businesswomen, told staff of the Ghana High Commission in Beijing the MBU at the Komfanoche Teaching Hospital in Kumasi will be commissioned in December. The First Lady added the Rebecca Foundation is helping to empower women and provide support to children.
Everyone has to come on board. It's not just the government. We all have to do our bit. I have started a foundation called the Rebecca Foundation, which is about empowering women and helping children also change their lives. There's so much that we can help women to do, and I'm doing my bit in doing that. But for now, I'm helping build a mother and baby unit at the Komfanoche Hospital. We started in July, and we're nearly finished. I think it's December we shall commission that mother and baby unit, which would help save our mothers and babies from dying. There's present units at Komfanoche is too small, and so mothers go and they suffer waiting to have babies, and they die. And so the children also, some of the babies die. This is why I'm helping build this unit. And from there, I go to Kolebu as well. Now it looks like I'm taking care of the health of women and children. And I ask for your support in doing this. I know you're all working hard here. You can send me some of your hard-earned cash to help do this.
National Peace Council Chairman, Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante, is unhappy about the police's failure to deal with increasing cases of political vigilantism in the country, despite the President's directives prompting them to do so. Reverend Professor Asante says partisan political vigilante groups are not above the law and must therefore be dealt with. He's been speaking at the third edition of the Accra Dialogue series themed The Scars of Vigilantism, a Legal Political Question, from where Komla Adom joins me live with details. Hello, Komla. So what else has Professor Asante been saying, or the other speakers?
Well, Israel, Professor Asante has been essentially calling on the security agencies to crack the whip, regardless of any interferences that come from the political arena, from social circles. He's just been challenging the security forces to take decisive steps in dealing with these individuals who he calls hooligans, who are causing mayhem across the country. And he was not the only speaker who called for the cracking of a whip on vigilante groups across the country. Other speakers, former Chief of Defense Staff, for example, Brigadier General Nunu Mensah, also mentioned that it must first start from the political party. Political leaders must, first of all, rein their supporters in, and then when that fails, the police, the security forces must then take up the challenge of enforcing law and order in the country. And you'll recall that Professor Ainin had mentioned that it was time for military intervention, and he reiterated that position today at the conference. He said, well, if the police feel they are handicapped and they cannot handle the issues of the vigilante groups, who he numbers up to about 19, he says the military has no other choice than to get involved. And first of all, they have to begin by picking intelligence. And once the intelligence is sought and then the police are unable to deal with the situation, the military will then have no choice but to use force in dealing with the situation to ensure that it is kept once and for all. So,
any government officials who were representing, and did they supply any suggestions or give any suggestions or give any concrete indications that they're taking this advice?
Well, unfortunately, there was no government representative at this particular forum. Neither was there representatives from the security forces. It was just a meeting of these top security experts and former Chief of Defense Staff who were having an academic discussion, at the law faculty here at the Gimpa School to an audience of law students here at the Gimpa Law School. And so at the moment, we are unable to tell if there was any government official here, but I did not see any government official at the event which just ended a few minutes ago. Neither was there representation from the security services, the police, the military, or any other. So,
all right, thank you very much, Komla Adom. A news conference called by government on Wednesday to give an update regarding investigations into the fire that gutted the Central Medical Stores in Tema in 2015 has been postponed to Thursday. The inferno, which was found to have been started deliberately to conceal wrongdoing, destroyed medicines worth 80 million cedis. But no one has been prosecuted yet for the crime. On Corruption Watch, we bring you a news desk report chronicling events following the destructive fire more than 2 years ago.
The key suspect in the fire that consumed medical supplies at the Central Medical Stores in Tema in 2015 has gone into hiding, impeding progress on prosecution. The fire, possibly the worst in the country's history according to investigators, occurred a day before a planned action to check some more practices and irregularities there. Medical supplies estimated at 80 million cedis at the time were all destroyed in the fire that took almost 3 days to quench. After a long wait for investigations into the incident, the national security was tasked to identify the cause of the fire, establish whether or not there was foul play, and if there was, determine the person or persons involved. The national security discovered that the fire was deliberate. One Samuel Dogbe, a laborer, was named as the suspected arsonist. According to the report, the suspect set the fire to destroy evidence of theft and massive fraud and widespread misdeed in the procurement and distribution of medical supplies involving senior management and junior staff. But shortly after these revelations were made, Then Health Minister Alex Segbefia disclosed at a press conference in Accra the suspect was on the run and was being sought by security agencies. This is why no one has been prosecuted. The National Security Report also indicated the motive for the destruction of evidence was the fact that the Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, had been tasked to investigate circumstances surrounding the expiration of large quantities of drugs and medical items at the store. A stock count of all medical consumables had also been slated for January 13, 2015 to be used for an exhaustive audit of supplies made to the CMS and allocations to health institutions in 2014. In other words, the suspected irregularities and fraud in procurement and allocations to health institutions and other malpractices which necessitated the planned investigations and audit provided a motive for the sponsorship of the arson. The investigations also revealed that managers of the malaria control program allegedly diverted large quantities of anti-malaria drugs meant for public health institutions. Also, system software for recording stock levels of medical supplies and keeping track of allocations was manipulated, rendering it ineffective and facilitating massive diversion of medical items. The investigations also discovered that large quantities of Artemether lumefantrine, an anti-malaria drug, were stolen or diverted and sold to entities in Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire.
Former President John Dramani Mahama says the death of the late multimedia broadcaster Kwejo Asaribafo Champon Kaba should be a wake-up call to revamp the country's healthcare system. He was addressing management and staff of the multimedia group on Wednesday during a visit to commiserate and sign the Book of Condolence, paying tribute to the late political talk show host. Ernest Menu reports.
The former president arrived in the company of former Chief of Staff Julius Debra, NDC Greater Accra Chairman Adekoka, minority members of parliament and scores of party faithful. He extolled the work of the late broadcaster and called for improved healthcare systems.
We all received the news of his passing with shock. For those of us who did not know that he had any illnesses, I mean, we didn't expect that, you know, at a very tender age of 37, somebody like he put the chips where they were, no matter which political party or which personalities were involved. And it is that harsh objectivity that we're going to miss. I just feel signed the Book of Condolence, and I said that maybe we must use his death to look at other issues other than just politics, like healthcare. How can we improve healthcare so that young people like this are not struck down? I mean, and Kaba is not the first, Komla Dumont, there are so many other people who at the very prime of life, you know, have just been snuffed out like a candle. And so maybe we must be talking more about how we can make healthcare better in this country so that we're able to avoid these kinds of calamities that has befalling us today.
Also, the Minister for Trade and Industry, Alan Chomantin, paid tribute to Kaba, commending his ability to research and seek knowledge on various subject matters.
The interaction that I've had with a friend who has now been called to glory was always characterized by respect, by constructive engagement. And I think this is what broadcasting is about. And one thing that I can say to his credit is that anytime Kaba has the opportunity to interview you, he makes sure that he learns about the content and the subject matter for the particular interview. And it's on that basis that he's able to create the right atmosphere for that kind of constructive engagement and interaction.
Suspended chairman of the NPP, Paul Afoko, also signed the book of condolence describing Kaba as a fair and balanced journalist whose ethics are worthy of emulation.
My first interview here with Kaba, in this building, in the studio upstairs, he asked me questions and I ended up thinking, this man is hostile to me. He doesn't like me. And just as we were ending, then Nana Kumia, Honorable Nana Kumia, was next in the seat. And I went out and continued to listen on the radio in the car. And the sort of questions he posed to Nana Kumia, I immediately said, he wasn't hostile. This is a balanced person, a balanced journalist who was trying to get at the truth. I hope that those who worked with him closely, especially the young ones, have learned a lot.
Ernest Menu for Joy News.